What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, we're going to talk about Nathan-ism. It's a new documentary, and it didn't have audio description in the screener. Possibly they thought they were giving me audio description. There's a question mark on that. But documentaries frequently never actually have the same level of audio description as narrative features anyway. So I'm used to this. Anyway, this is obviously in contention. This is an FYC for this coming year of awards slate, and that's why you're hearing about it. It features the story of Nathan Hailu, who is a former soldier during World War II, who, following World War II, actually, it does say he's 18, and this is post-World War II, so I don't think he ever fought in World War II. But he was tasked with guarding the Nazis that were being held for the Nuremberg trials. And from that, he's had sort of like all these years of memories of his experience there, and they were put on guard to keep, basically as like suicide watch. So, I mean, they were always like looking at and talking to these people to make sure that they were alive, because they were worried that these people were going to, to kill themselves, which was something else that was briefly covered. There's a snippet of that in another World War II themed documentary from this year called The Commandant's Shadow, which talks about cyanide pills as being a thing. So there's a recurring theme this year of that. But this is sort of a unique perspective. He's, after the war, he's just kind of like an artist who just kind of keeps drawing. And his work, he calls it his own style, of Nathan-ism. We have Impressionism, we have Romanticism, we have Dadaism or whatever, but there's also Nathan-ism, which is like his own art, his own style of art. And while I can't see it to know what that is, I was also thinking about that in terms of audio description and art in general. It's like, it's great in a live art exhibit. Like, that is where I expect that to come in. And we do have audio description if you go to like art galleries and stuff like that. And there's actual, like, a lot of contextual references to give you an idea of what it is that you're looking at. But when you have like seconds to describe something before the next person speaks, film is not necessarily the best place to represent the art, like physical art, to blind people, unless it's a film that literally sits back and takes a long time to stare at the artwork, which this film doesn't really do. It's not like this is a movie that's solely based on one specific painting, like a documentary on Starry Night or the Mona Lisa or something like that, where we're just analyzing the painting and all of the ins and outs, which would be kind of a fascinating film for a whole bunch of like art historians to really break down what makes a piece, the significance of the piece and the relevance to the artist and stuff like that. I don't know that it would last for 90 minutes, but I don't think it's been done before, so there's a plot idea for you. Yeah, it's an interesting story that also weaves itself with a little bit of, I want to say, I don't want to go too strong and say espionage, so a little bit of fact checking is thrown in there too. There's some doubt that is being cast. Is his story too good to be true? Find out by watching the movie. But really, the impact is in sitting here listening to this man tell the story. I mean, that is Yes, I'm sure for the sighted audience, it's also getting to see his drawings of and sketches of this period and see his unique style, which I'm told is unlike anything else. There are people in the art world who come in here and comment, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this before. Um, I think somebody said compared it to like, it would be like what a little child drew, but yet they're also fascinated by it, you know? And I think that's what's amazing. There's one scene where they compare one painting to a photograph, and they see a lot of the similarities, which goes to just support exactly what he's saying. There were a lot of World War II records that were destroyed, so it makes it really hard for them to validate. Uh, I'm not going to tell you whether they do, because that's the whole purpose of watching the movie. It's like 79 minutes of your life. You can fucking watch this movie. Um, it's a really, it's not even a full 80. It's 79 minutes. It's an hour and 19 minutes long. You can figure it out for yourself. You have that much time in your day. Um, but it's an interesting story. You know, he's from Jewish descent himself, and he's sitting out there and talking to these guys who famously, you know, Nazis, not great to Jews, you know? I shouldn't have to say that in a review. We should be inferred, but in case, you know, I don't know what history books you read, but if you read the wrong ones, it wasn't a great time. So, for him to be a guard over the Nazis, he even sort of has an interesting perspective over that, and how the guards, you know, it seemed as though that the Nazi soldiers that he was guarding just didn't care that he was Jewish. Like, there wasn't anything to that. I would say they were in a cell, and you were the one who had the upper hand and who was feeding them. You know what I'm saying? Like, their fates had still not yet been sealed. It wasn't necessarily that every single person was necessarily going to be headed to the gallows. They didn't know that at the time. So, you know, when you're trying to present yourself in the best light, you also don't want to look like a raving lunatic. And when the narrative against you is Nazis hate Jews, there's a great opportunity to say, no, we don't. Like, the guy who's guarding us, isn't he? Yeah, he's a good guy. Nathan, he's a good guy. I like him. I like that guy. If only there were more Nathans. um, so I don't know that necessarily the fact that he met a couple Nazis who were locked behind bars is the most accurate representation of character. But he also seems to be haunted by the stories and the presence and the fact that he was there. And it's sort of finding somebody who was in a place at a time, and it was a really specific place and time. It was a really unique place and time. And they're also doing this thing on the side. You know, they're making this art about this story, this life that they've lived. And that's what's compelling about it. The little details and everything will depend on how much, you know, whether or not you like the movie and how much you like it and how much it resonates with you, will all the little factors. But the whole reason why the producer of Won't You Be My Neighbor jumped onto this is because it's how few people were in this situation that are still alive. This dude's in his 90s, you know? Um, this is one of those things when you find out that it exists, you have to jump on it. It's sort of like, I'm surprised we don't have a documentary of whoever the last survivor of the Titanic was. That's just them being like the last survivor, the documentary. How does it feel to be the last survivor of the Titanic? Like, there's certain moments in time and certain aspects where you want to like get as much of that knowledge as possible, like either on paper in a memoir and film and camera and audio, something. It's like before all that knowledge is lost, before it just, that experience goes with that person. And there's something about Nathan-ism that is like a record of that he was, that Nathan Hulu was something. I'm gonna end up keep saying Hulu, whether I want to or not. Nathan Hulu. I have to say it really slowly. I talk about way too many streaming services. I default into Hulu all the time. Um, but that's what I think works about Nathan-ism. Do I think it's? I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go as a documentary. Sort of famously, the documentary branch kind of ignored "Won't You Be My Neighbor," which pissed me off at the time, to be totally honest. Um, but Nathan-ism is up against like some heavy hitters at a time when the world is in chaos. And just like last year, there were a lot of really great documentaries, but it's really hard to sit there and watch 20 Days of Mariupol and be like, that's not gonna, like, I think everybody who saw it, once they saw it, was like, there's no way. There's no way that doesn't win. I felt the same way about Navalny. The year I saw Navalny, I was like, there's no way. There are a few documentaries this year that are just really like have a pulse on what 2024 is, in one way or another. And Nathan-ism is so close to that because it's talking about, in many ways, anti-Semitism, World War II, significance and relevance in today. But it's not profoundly about that. It's not profoundly about exploring anti-Semitism in a larger scale. It's more about just exploring his story, which makes for a very interesting documentary that I'm glad that I got to watch. But I don't know what his awards chances are. I don't know how far it goes. I will say, to compliment, I don't memorize everybody's names before I do this, so my apologies to both the director and the score writer. For a film that didn't have audio description, that was all about art, I found myself sort of really drawn, may I say, wrapped in the score for this film. I thought the score for this was really nice. And I don't know that it's most the memorable in the way that you sit down and you hear like 3 seconds of John Williams and you go, oh my God, I know what movie that is. It's not necessarily iconic, but it was very nice to listen to. It's the kind of thing where I would love to just listen to it in the background. I don't know that I'll ever like hear it and be like, is that the score to Nathan-ism? Like, it's not like that level, but it's very pleasant and very nice. And again, documentary scores, not high on the priority list for original score. So I don't think anything's gonna happen, but maybe there's something out there in the ether. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I thought the film had a nice score to it. Audio description, again, I kind of said this about a similar film, another film that I saw, where I was like, the audio description has to be so specific because it has to understand what it is that it's describing, and not everybody's willing to pay for that level of audio description. A lot of times, somebody pays for, cheap audio description, and they get cheap audio description. There are levels, and they have to sort of really figure out a way to translate what Nathan-ism is from an art perspective. And if you're not fluid in art, then you're just sort of describing it from a layman's perspective, which doesn't necessarily contrast other styles. It doesn't really say how is what he's doing different than anything else. Like, what makes him special? Why was anybody ever drawn to his art in the first place? So in a weird way, it almost launches this other thing that I know we don't do too much of in audio description, which is actually like consulting and actually asking somebody and being like, so tell me, if you don't quite understand what it is that you're looking at, maybe we should ask for help. Maybe we should phone a friend. And that would be what my wish for this audio description track would be, if it ever gains an audio description track, would be And there are a lot of very talented writers out there, and hopefully they would do the work to, because the film doesn't necessarily explain to and break it down in the way from an art historian perspective, because it's not really the narrative. The narrative is World War II, but the film is Nathan-ism. So that's the title. So to try to understand what that is when he says my art is Nathan-ism, it's, not Impressionism, it's Nathan-ism. You have to figure out a way how to communicate that. So I'm glad it didn't have bad audio description. In some ways, because it's a documentary and would have limited audio description as it is, it's almost like it's unsullied at this point. Like the world is still possibility for this film. I hope it does gain audio description, because I want blind people to have as much access as it possible. But that would be my feedback to anybody looking to do audio description is, how do you translate that in the limited amount of time that you have in between people talking without trampling anybody's phrases, because Nathan does a lot of talking. There's a lot of storytelling there. There are other people who come in and talk about why they're bothering to do this, tell this story and investigate his life and all that kind of stuff. So use the time wisely, and if you can't figure out how to describe it in a way that separates it from other forms of art, ask ask art historians, ask somebody with an art degree, for help. And in the meantime, the rest of you go check out Nathan-ism. It's a good story. I think this year just has a lot of really strong documentaries. This is the kind of thing that wouldn't surprise me if it made the short list, but would surprise me if it made the final 5. Just based on sort of how the doc branch seems to be operating nowadays. But you never know. We'll see. Anyway, I was pretty well entertained. I'm gonna go ahead and grade this. I could say it's unwatchable from a perspective of if somebody's here for the art. And while the film is called Nathan-ism, one could argue that is why you're here, is to learn about Nathan's art. But in other regards, I would say it's also a man passing along his history and his story. And there's as much value in that as possible. And to that, we could just listen to this dude talk all day long. This is like I could meet him in real life and he could just tell me stories about what his life was like, and I would find that fascinating. So there's a certain angle of this that's fascinating just in and of itself, whether it's in film, audio, book form, whatever it is. His story is unique enough to carry some sort of worth to this film, regardless of anything else. But was it my favorite film of the year as a blind person without audio description? No. But I appreciate the fact that it exists, and Nathan is an important footnote in history. So I'm gonna give Nathan-ism a B+. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Check it out. It should be playing in select cities in and around you soon. And I will see you guys on the other side.